Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Revelation in the News. I'm your host, Zach Drew.
I'm your host, Sasha Voles.
And I'm Andrew Bellers.
It's good to be back with you. This is the Week in Review. We want to cover the most important, most pressing topics that take place during the week time frame and talk about them every single Friday. But remember that if there's any breaking news that we feel you need to know about that day, we're going to actually have a Revelation in the News show that day as well.
That's right.
So this week, the top story is the Zika virus. We've been getting requests to talk about it, hearing our opinions. What do we think about the Zika virus? The Zika virus, it's a mysterious virus, and it's carried by mosquitoes, apparently wreaking havoc in Latin America, and it's spreading fast. It's already in over 20 different countries, but should we be worried? And is this a revelation event or another virus? Or is it just another virus that's going to, be gone in a few months? We'll tackle the issue. Or is it a type of issue that we look about the pestilence in Matthew 24 or, the disease from the animals in Revelation chapter 6? Is this a revelation event? We're going to be dealing with that on today's broadcast. But they're saying that it could be a pandemic.
Yeah, and I know that it's been a big topic of news for the past at least week, if not more, and it doesn't really seem to be going away. We've seen hints of it before, and it keeps growing and growing. I have an article here from BBC News that says Zika virus could become explosive pandemic. It says U.S. scientists have urged the World Health Organization to take urgent action over the Zika virus, which they say has explosive pandemic potential. It says, writing in the U.S. Medical Journal, they called on the WHO to heed lessons from the Ebola outbreak and convene an emergency committee of disease experts. They said a vaccine might be ready for testing in 2 years, but it could be a decade before it is publicly available.
Like you said, the World Health Organization, they've already announced that it's a global emergency. And, we've talked about it before, that scientists, we're not just talking about the religious, the Christian community, but we're talking about scientists have warned for the past couple of decades that we are overdue right now for a pandemic. Not just an epidemic, but a pandemic. Taking over an entire country or large regions of the entire world. Similar to the 1918 Great Influenza that infected 500 million people, which was 1/4 of the world at that time, killing upwards of 100 million people in 1918. And we're overdue for a similar type of pandemic, but it is explosive, and they're warning that it could become a pandemic. Like I said at the broadcast earlier, 20 countries have already been infected with this, and including the United States. They have a case in Virginia. They have cases in New York. They have 6 cases actually in Texas. It says 6 cases of the Zika virus confirmed in Texas. Texas has 6 cases of Zika virus disease the state's health department has confirmed. All the infections were diagnosed after people returned home from international travel. No local transmissions of the disease have been reported. Now, so what is it? I mean, are people dying from it? Should we be scared about this? It is a very important, topic to deal with. Nobody has died from this. I don't believe you even can die from this. What it affects is actually fetuses within the mother's womb, that it affects it. If the Zika virus is within the body, it can actually shrink the baby's cranium, affecting, their entire life. But here's another article. It says this: the 3rd case of Zika virus confirmed in New York City.
Oh, wow.
It says, as the World Health Organization predicts infections will spike to 4 million over the next year. So, granted, 4 million, yes, I'm glad people wrote into us and said, listen, talk about it. Because something is infecting 4 million people within 1 year. We need to be addressing this from a biblical standpoint. What does the Word of God have to say about these type of things? It says a 3rd case of the Zika virus has been confirmed in the Big Apple, and a pregnant woman who contracted the mosquito-borne infection while traveling overseas. It says the new city tally was released as international health officials warn that up to 4 million people across the Americas could be infected with the Zika virus over the next year. World Health Organization Director General Margaret Chan said the virus is spreading explosively, and the level of alarm is extremely high.
I think one of the scariest things about this virus is that it doesn't really seem to be causing death. It is mostly affecting children, especially in the womb. But a scary statistic I read in one article said that only 10% of children who are affected by this in the womb, only 10% don't have any adverse neurological conditions, basically any learning conditions. So something like 90% have it somehow is affecting their brain function and how they progress and grow, which is kind of scary.
Absolutely. And this really does show how it is affecting our nation because of the fear of what is going on and how quickly it is spreading. And really, I have an article right here that shows all 3 big U.S. carriers offer to refund on Zika concerns. That's with the airports and the different flights. And so all 3 of the USA's biggest airlines are allowing some customers to cancel or postpone their trips if they are ticketed to fly to areas affected by Zika. The move by the carriers this week comes from amid rising concerns about the mosquito-borne virus. United and Delta will allow customers concerned about the Zika virus to cancel or postpone their trips if they are ticketed to those areas.
Exactly. And, I don't want to be a fearmonger and just strike fear into people and say, the Zika virus is here. Jesus is returning next week. This is the end of the world. But I would venture to say that the Zika virus is not the pestilence that is specifically mentioned in Matthew 24, where Jesus said that these pestilences will run across the earth right before I come back. And I would completely say that this is not the virus that's going to kill 1/4 of the world that Revelation chapter 6 speaks about. But it is a virus, and it is affecting millions of people rapidly. If this was a type of virus that could kill people that has no cure as of right now, like the Zika virus, where a vaccine could take anywhere between 2 to 10 years to develop, if this virus was killing people, this is the type of virus that would be a Matthew 24 virus. This would be a Revelation 6 virus. So is it these viruses? I don't think so. I don't believe it is. But it's a good reminder to stop and be refreshed on what the Word of God says about viruses and pestilences like this. We need to study what it says so whenever it does happen, we will not be caught unaware. Let me just read you a couple of scriptures that the Bible talks about these types of pestilences. It says, the signs of the times and the end of the age. This is Matthew 24, verses 3 through 14. It says, now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, Jesus, the disciples came to him privately saying, tell us, when will these things be? What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? A very direct question. I love it. I love this question. What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age? And Jesus says it exactly how it is. There's no guessing. He says this. Jesus answered them, take heed that no one deceives you. Take heed, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Christ, and will deceive many. So, and the list goes on, and you will hear about wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet, for nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines, no food to eat. There will be pestilences, like the Zika virus, and earthquakes in various places. All these are just the beginning of sorrows. So the disciples ask him, Andrew, what's the world going to look like before you come back? And he lists these events, starting with people are going to come in my name, claiming that that it says, let me read it exactly. Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Christ, and will deceive many. Now, I know you have something to say about this, but I believe this verse is commonly misunderstood, because it's not saying that people are going to come claiming that they are Jesus and deceive many. They're going to be coming claiming that Jesus is Jesus. They're going to be coming claiming that Jesus is Jesus, that they are a Christian, and then by that, they will deceive many.
Yeah, there are all kinds of deception going on in the world right now, especially this country. One of the biggest ways that could possibly happen, we talk a lot on the show about it, is through the faith of Islam, that they say, Jesus is Jesus, but he's not the Jesus that you think he is. Yeah. So there's that major deception, which I think very well could be the deception that Jesus is talking about in Matthew 24. But in any major regime where people are being oppressed and they're sort of giving in to that oppression. You know, you look at the Nazis in Germany.
Yeah.
And a lot of their ideology, a lot of it came from a guy named Friedrich Nietzsche. And one of the things that he said was essentially that morality there's no higher law, there's no spiritual or godly law, that morality is objective. And because of that, truth is objective. And we're seeing that in America right now, where people are saying, America's almost like a math class where the teacher says, what's 2 plus 2? And everyone raises their hands. And someone says 5, and another says 6, and somebody says 22. And you raise your hand and you say 4, and he says yes to all of you. It's all right. And you're like, no, that's ridiculous. The answer is 4. And he calls you a bigot because why is your truth more valid than anyone else's? And that's a pervasive spirit that we're seeing in this country right now.
You know, I'm even reminded that, we need to study the past to understand what we're going through now and to be able to understand what we'll probably go through in the future. You know, history has a peculiar way of repeating itself. And whenever I read, take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, claiming that I am Jesus, and then deceive many. I'm reminded, like you said, of Hitler. You know, Hitler came claiming to be a Christian, and he deceived Christian Germany, Christian America. You can draw the parallels here. You know, Hitler was an antichrist. That's what he was. And he deceived Christian Germany. You see, a lot of people don't understand that Germany was how incredibly Christian they were. You know, we're so whenever we think about World War II and Germany in like those years from 1933 to 1945, we just think of the horrors of it. We think of the Holocaust and swastikas and the Nazi regime and the evils that took place. And because of that, we forget about Germany's great history. Leading up to that, they were highly Christian. I mean, the Germans, they regarded Martin Luther like the Jews would regard Moses. I mean, they even had a day, it was called Reformation Sunday, where they celebrated Martin Luther, similar to how in America we would celebrate 4th of July. I mean, even in their school systems, Andrew, in Germany, but before this, they had confirmation classes. You had the opportunity, you learn about the church in school, and you had the opportunity to become baptized into the Christian church. They were highly Christian. But Hitler came, claiming that Jesus was Jesus. And by that, they were deceived. Inch by inch by inch, they were deceived.
Yeah. Had the greatest theologians in the world in Germany. I mean, we're reading a book about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and he's just talking about all of these men that he's coming up in his education with, and how all of them wanted him. But Germany really was, at one point, it was almost like the center of the world. It's crazy how focused they were on Christianity, and really, it really almost was a Christian-run state. When you look at the Kaiser, I mean, he was Christian, and everything was according to the law of God.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, because what Andrew was talking about is before World War I, Germany was a monarch run by the Kaiser, who was a Christian man. And it's because of what happened after World War I and the Treaty of Versailles that, part of the Allies, America, we forced on Germany that they had to become a democracy, which they had no idea how to operate in a democracy. And because of that, they voted in this, cunning, bold, articulate speaker that claimed to be a Christian, that they thought, hey, maybe he can restore Germany to its former glory. And they were deceived. That's how it took place. Mm-hmm. And, there was, we're not going to go here right now, but there was a true church. The true church did not follow Germany in this time. And it was called the Confessing Church, led by Karl Barth and Martin Niemöller and even Dietrich Bonhoeffer, where they broke away. And I believe in this time period, take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. I believe that the true church in this time, and we're approaching it, is going to have to go underground, just like the true Christian church did in World War II under the Antichrist of the time, Hitler. It's fantastic parallels here. But let me just keep going with this. And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation. In the Greek, nation there is ethnos. It's where we get our word ethnic from. So he's saying that for ethnic group will rise against ethnic group. Are we not seeing that right now? And kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of sorrows. Then they will hand you over to be persecuted. Hand you over to what? There's nothing in America that they can hand me over to where I'm going to be persecuted and killed. You see, this is talking about a worldwide system that will come upon the world, that whether you're in the Middle East, in Europe, in America, wherever you are, you'll be able to turn you over to a system to be persecuted and killed. And it says, and you will be hated by all the nations for my name's sake. So like I said, this Zika virus is an incredible opportunity to take that Bible off your bookshelf that's gathering dust and see what it says about pestilence, see what it says about the times that we're living in. And Andrew, Revelation chapter 6 speaks of pestilences as well. Can you read that for us?
Yeah, it says, Revelation chapter 6, 7 through 8. It says, the fourth seal. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, "Come and see." So I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And the name of him who sat on it was Death, and Hades followed with him. And power was given to them over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword, with hunger, with death, and by the beasts of the earth.
And now when you take that phrase, the beast of the earth, that's where it really gets interesting. But when you go back into that real translation from the Greek and Hebrew, you realize that it doesn't just say the beast of the earth, it says disease from the animals. And so really when you look at what's happening today, you're not expecting, when you read the book of Revelation, and that's where I encourage you to get back into the true Greek and Hebrew translations and really see what it's saying, because there's so much, when you read this, when it says with death and the beast of the earth, what are you trying to expect? Are you expecting elephants and monkeys to start attacking people and tigers to get out of cages? No. When you look back at that translation, it simply says diseases from the animals, which is so common nowadays. When you look around, there's some kind of virus, there's some kind of sickness now spreading. And now as we're entering these Revelation days, that's becoming more and more prevalent in our daily lives. And really where it could be going and where it is going is so much more scarier. But it shows us in the book of Revelation that these things are coming.
That's a great thought, Sasha. Yeah, how ridiculous to think that 1.7 or 1.8 billion people, a fourth of the world, would be killed by beasts of the earth. It's like you said in that Greek there, disease from the animals. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's what great influenza of 1918 was from the animals. Mm-hmm. Ebola came from the monkeys. Even the Zika virus, you know, it was first discovered in 1947 out of the Zika forest in Uganda. Mm. And Zika means overgrown, actually, you know, the overgrown virus. That's kind of a weird thing. But it was first discovered in 1947 from the monkeys. It comes from the animals. You know, it just happens again and again and again. There was another article, Andrew, talking about superbug deaths.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've been talking about how scientists themselves have been saying we're overdue for a pandemic. Something is happening, is going to happen. I have an article here that says superbug deaths expected to outnumber cancer deaths by 2050 thanks to overused antibiotics. It says the report says that if the situation is not brought under control, upwards of 10 million people will likely die every year, while costing hundreds of trillions of dollars in attempts to resolve the problem. The predicted annual mortality rate means that more people would die than those who currently die annually from cancer, a disease that's known to attack the body, often with relentless vigor. However, the potential problem isn't limited strictly to antibiotics either. Jim O'Neill, an economist who is also the chair of the Review on Antimicrobial Resistance, explained that the situation involves all antimicrobials. So really, all of these efforts that we've been taking to kind of cheat nature over these years really has broken down our natural system for immunity. And I think that we've really only just been prolonging or putting off, rather, the effects of a pandemic, and that when it hits, it's really going to hit hard.
Yes, and actually, we were just doing another show called The Jim Baker Show. Obviously, if you watch this, you know The Jim Baker Show. But we were on there with a few doctors the other day, and as we were talking with these doctors, we were talking about just all of the superbugs, and we were talking about just how people are becoming so immune to these things that are coming upon them. But the one thing that we were talking about, of course, is silver sol. And the one thing that I loved about that is that Dr. Selman, on the show even, because we talked behind closed doors in the green room about everything, but she got on air and encouraged everybody, make sure you have your silver sol, because that is the one thing that can fight against this. It's not breaking down your immune system. It's not killing off all of your cells. It's not killing you. It's empowering your body to be able to fight off these viruses and these different pandemics that are coming on. And it's the only thing that can actually cure, or well, not cure, but be able to prevent a lot of these different bugs that are coming on. And that's where I'm just so thankful to God that we're allowed to even, and privileged enough to have this in our lives. And so even, this is just a shameless plug, but I just believe that if you're hearing this right now, make sure you have silver sol in your home for your family too.
And unfortunately, because of the big pharmaceutical and it being, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, you can't make claims on natural products that it cures things.
Yes.
But we can say it really does prevent. And I'm telling you right now that we asked the doctors, what can silver sol do for the Zika virus?
Mm-hmm.
I said for Zika, and they said, well, is it a virus? I said, yeah, it's the Zika virus. They said, well, then you need to take it, and it'll do what it needs to do with the Zika virus. So
Absolutely.
I would honestly strongly suggest you taking a little bit of silver sol every single day, and help prevent these type of things from coming. I mean, it's incredible. It's not just the Zika virus. We can't go into it right now. We have a few minutes left. But silver sol truly is a miracle product. But what else is happening in other news, Andrew?
Well, there's a little bit of controversy right now because Obama recently had a speech, and it was the first time he gave an address from an American mosque. And I have an article here that says, Obama calls upon Muslims, Christians to build bridges, saying we're all descendants of Abraham. During this first trip to an Islamic mosque during his presidency, Barack Obama called upon Christians to build bridges with Muslims and vice versa. This 40-minute speech sought to portray Muslims as being an integral part of the fabric of the nation and to call upon Americans to speak more positively of the Islamic religion. Islam has always been a part of America, he contended, stating that many of the slaves that came from Africa were Muslim and that Thomas Jefferson and John Adams possessed copies of the Quran. So this is not a new thing. Generations of Muslims have helped to build our nation. Obama also pointed to the historicity of American mosques dating back to the 1800s and said that some thought Thomas Jefferson was a Muslim. So Obama is not the first president to be accused of following Islam. But what's interesting is that he mentioned that Thomas Jefferson and John Adams possessed copies of the Quran. And that's interesting because if you know history, then you know that Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were ambassadors both before they were presidents. And they were in London, and they had to sign a treaty with the Pasha, I believe he's called. Oh, no, not... It was the ambassador of Tripoli, because basically what was happening is there were these pirates who were in northern Africa, and they were raiding Europe and even the American colonies before America was a nation. And Europe, instead of fighting, just said, we're going to pay them off. We're going to pay tribute so that we can use the Mediterranean Sea. So basically you have this mob of pirates who were controlling that were Muslim, that were controlling the Mediterranean Sea. It was really an early type of terrorism.
And so they had the Qurans to read the Qurans to understand why in the world are these people doing the things that they're doing to us. We didn't do anything to provoke them.
Specifically, that's because Thomas Jefferson and John Adams were speaking with the ambassador, and they said, why? Why are you attacking us? Why are you raiding us? Why are you taking villages
What did we do to you?
Yeah, why are you taking villages of slaves away? And this was his answer. This is a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote. And he said, the ambassador answered us that it was founded on the laws of their prophet, that it was written in the Quran that all nations who should not have acknowledged their authority were sinners, that it was their right and duty to make war upon them wherever they could be found, and to make slaves of all they could take as prisoners, and that every Mussulman who should be slain, and that's Muhammadan or Muslims, who should be slain in battle was sure to go to paradise. That sounds really familiar.
Exactly. You know, the part where in this article, Obama's 40-minute speech sought to portray Muslims as being an integral part of the fabric of this nation, of America, and to call upon Americans to speak more positively of the Islamic religion. You know, I want to talk about what Franklin Graham said about this situation. The media is making a lot of noise today about President Obama's visiting a mosque in an attempt to recast what he said was a warped image of Islam. The foundations of this nation have nothing to do with Islam. This is Franklin Graham. Get mad at him. But everything to do with the Church of Jesus Christ. Islam cannot save anyone from hell or open the gates of heaven. Only one can do that, and that's Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who paid the debt of sin for all mankind by giving his life as a sacrifice on Calvary's cross, where he suffered and died for our sins. He took the sins to the grave, and on the third day, God raised him triumphantly to life. He's alive today. Muhammad, he's dead. I worship a risen Lord. Islam can't compete with that. You know, another thing that I want to talk about before we leave today's program is that I've been hearing, you know, you can't get mad at ISIS for their extremism of the horrible things that they have done because, you know, Christians, we don't have the best track record either. Just look at through the Crusades. And the thing that I would say about that is you're right. The Crusades were a horrible thing. It was, you know, something that many Christians, we try to kind of brush under the rug and try to ignore. But the bottom line is this, is that ISIS, the things, the horrible things that they're doing, all they are doing is they are emulating their Savior. They are emulating Muhammad. They are being perfect Muslims. They are following the Quran and the Hadiths to a T. They're incredible. They're incredible Muslims. The Crusades, if you want to go that route, horrible. Shouldn't have happened. Shame on the Christians. But guess what? Those Christians, they weren't emulating their Savior. They weren't emulating Jesus. They were emulating the love. That's the difference between ISIS and Christianity. And I wanted to say,
I think the point of all of this is that we want to be informed about what's happening, and we want you to be informed. We want you to be informed that the word doesn't mean peace. Islam is from Islama, which means submit. And that is their ideology. That is their version of peace. If everyone submits to them, then of course they'll be in peace. You know, there will be no warfare on the earth because they'll own all of the earth. And I think it's necessary to know our enemy, their ideology. It's necessary to know the past so that we're not deceived. So that what happens in Germany, even if it happens in this country, it doesn't happen to you as a believer specifically. That you will not fall into the deception that is very well coming over this country.
We have about a minute and a half left. There are a couple more articles that are worth talking about that were in the news this week, and it shows that the darkness is growing darker. But remember that all that means is that Jesus is coming soon. Actually, in 1 Thessalonians, it says, you are all children of the light, you and I. If we have Christ living within us, we are children of the light and children of the day. We do not belong to the night or the darkness. So then let us not be like others who are asleep, but let us be awake and sober. And the expanse is growing more and more. School children given 25 options in gender survey. Fox's Lucifer TV show, Satanic Deception, goes primetime. Another article, NBC comedy suggests Jesus was gay. I mean, it's the most incredible expanse. We're living in a time where the light is growing lighter, but the dark is growing darker. Keep your eyes on Jesus, and you don't have to be scared about the times that we're living in. We love you guys, and we'll see you next Friday.